The clock read 8:42 a.m. as Kendrick Robinson parked his car in the lot outside the municipal courthouse in Greenville, South Carolina. The warm morning sunlight cast long shadows across the asphalt, and Kendrick exhaled deeply. He hated being late. As a federal prosecutor, his professional life revolved around discipline and preparedness. But today, life had conspired against him. This wasn't supposed to be a complicated morning. The task ahead was mundane, challenging an error in a property tax adjustment on the house his grandmother left him. The city had raised the taxes inexplicably, and Kendrick had spent weeks gathering proof that it was a mistake. The house was more than property to him. It was the anchor of his childhood, the place where he had learned right from wrong under his grandmother's watchful eye. Dressed in a dark navy suit with a crisp white shirt, Kendrick looked every bit the seasoned attorney he was, even if his morning had been far from smooth. An urgent phone call about an ongoing human trafficking case had delayed him. The defense team had filed a last-minute motion, and Kendrick couldn't ignore it. He had reviewed the motion and provided feedback to his team before rushing to court, knowing he was cutting it close. As he approached the courthouse steps, his phone buzzed. A quick glance showed a message from his assistant at the U.S. Attorney's office. The judge in Greenville has a reputation for being tough on latecomers. Be careful. Kendrick sighed, tucking his phone into his briefcase. He wasn't worried. Facts were his weapon, and he came armed with evidence. But something in the message lingered. He shook it off as he stepped into the cool interior of the courthouse. The municipal court wasn't like the federal courts where Kendrick spent most of his days. The walls were a dull beige, the seats scuffed from decades of use. The air smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. Despite its worn appearance, the place buzzed with activity. People shuffled in and out, clutching stacks of documents, faces etched with anxiety over parking tickets, minor disputes, and other small claims. Kendrick checked his watch. 8:50 a.m. 10 minutes to spare, barely enough time to find the correct courtroom. He followed the signs down a narrow hallway, passing people speaking in hushed tones. Room 204. Judge Charles Whitman was etched in brass on the door. Kendrick adjusted his tie and stepped inside. The courtroom was already filling with people. Kendrick found a spot near the back and sat down, flipping open his folder to review his evidence. As he scanned his notes, he noticed the judge entering the room. Judge Charles Whitman, a tall man with a silver mane and piercing blue eyes, commanded attention without saying a word. His reputation as a no-nonsense figure was evident in the way he scanned the room, his sharp gaze missing nothing. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The room shuffled to its feet. Kendrick joined in, his posture straight. As the judge settled into his chair, Kendrick noticed the stark silence that followed. Judge Whitman began calling cases one by one with mechanical efficiency, his tone crisp and detached. Kendrick watched closely. A middle-aged man in a suit, arriving a few minutes late, shuffled into the room unnoticed. Moments later, a young woman in casual clothes slipped in and took a seat. Neither received so much as a glance from the judge. Kendrick made a mental note but focused on his own case. Finally, at 9:15 a.m., Kendrick heard his name called. He gathered his folder and made his way to the podium, projecting calm despite the slight delay. As he approached, Judge Whitman looked up, his expression hardening. Kendrick felt the shift in the room, a quiet tension that hadn't been present for the previous cases. "You're late, Mr. Robinson," the judge said sharply, his voice cutting through the room. "Do you think the court's time is less valuable than your own?" Kendrick raised his hand slightly, palms out, in a gesture of acknowledgement. "Your Honor, I apologize for the delay. I was attending to urgent federal matters." The judge cut him off. "Excuses don't excuse tardiness. This court operates on order and respect. If you can't follow that, I suggest you reevaluate your priorities." Kendrick felt the weight of dozens of eyes on him. He maintained his composure, choosing his next words carefully. "Your Honor, I understand the importance of timeliness. If I may, I'd like to present my case regarding the property tax adjustment." Judge Whitman waved a hand dismissively. "We'll get to that. First, there's the matter of contempt. Tardiness undermines the integrity of these proceedings. You are hereby fined $750. The words hung in the air like a hammer striking an anvil. Kendrick's jaw tightened slightly, but he kept his expression neutral. Around him, murmurs rippled through the room. "Your Honor," Kendrick began, his tone calm and measured. "May I explain?" The judge raised his gavel, silencing him. "You may not. Consider this a lesson in respecting the court." Kendrick stepped back, his mind racing. This wasn't just about tardiness. It was about something deeper, something that many in the room had likely seen before. He glanced briefly at the other latecomers, none of whom had been reprimanded. The disparity was glaring, and Kendrick wasn't about to let it slide. As he returned to his seat, Kendrick opened his folder, but this time it wasn't the property tax documents he focused on. He began jotting notes, his pen moving swiftly across the page. The judge, meanwhile, continued with the next case, his voice unwavering. Kendrick knew one thing for certain. This was no ordinary morning. Kendrick sat in the back row, his mind a whirlwind of calculations and observations. The courtroom proceeded in its rhythm, but Kendrick couldn't shake the blatant disparity he had just witnessed. He replayed the moment Judge Whitman imposed the $750 fine, contrasting it with the indifference shown to others who had arrived late. The young woman who had slipped in earlier sat near the front, scrolling on her phone, untouched by reprimand. A man in a gray blazer, now presenting his case, had clearly walked in after the judge began. Yet, the gavel's ire had been reserved solely for Kendrick. This wasn't an isolated moment. It was a pattern Kendrick could recognize as plainly as the documents in his briefcase. He turned to his legal instincts, assessing the situation with precision. A fine this steep for tardiness in municipal court was extreme, even punitive. He noted the expressions of those around him, a mix of disbelief, discomfort, and curiosity. Kendrick could tell that others in the room were thinking the same thing, but no one dared to speak. "Next case," Judge Whitman announced. Kendrick's name echoed in the room again. He stood, his stride calm and deliberate as he returned to the podium. The judge fixed him with the same piercing gaze, as if daring him to falter. Kendrick began, "Your Honor, I have here documentation regarding the erroneous property tax adjustment. The property has been in my family for decades, and these adjustments do not align with the city's assessed values." He placed the folder on the podium, opening it to reveal neatly organized documents and photographs. He gestured toward a specific page. "This shows the original tax assessment, which remained consistent for 5 years. The new adjustment, however, reflects a 30% increase without proper notification or explanation." Judge Whitman leaned back in his chair, exuding an air of disinterest. "I'll review it in due time, Mr. Robinson. However, your tardiness this morning is a matter we cannot overlook. Do you truly believe that the urgency of your federal responsibilities justifies disrespecting this court?" Kendrick's composure remained intact. "Your Honor, I mean no disrespect. My delay was due to a federal case involving human trafficking, a matter I believe we all agree requires immediate attention." The judge's eyes narrowed slightly, but his tone didn't waver. "Your priorities, however noble, do not excuse breaking the rules. Court procedures exist for a reason." It wasn't the words themselves that struck Kendrick. It was the unspoken tone of dismissal, the implicit message that his explanation wasn't good enough. His professional achievements, his character, even his effort to respect the system, none of it mattered in this room. Kendrick took a slow breath, letting the moment settle. "Your Honor, I understand the importance of rules. However, I must ask, are these rules applied equally to everyone in this courtroom?" A ripple of unease passed through the room. The judge stiffened, the color in his face deepening. "Are you questioning the integrity of this court, Mr. Robinson?" "I'm asking for clarity," Kendrick replied, his tone even. "It's important to ensure that fairness is upheld, not just for myself, but for everyone here." The judge's gavel came down sharply. "I will not tolerate accusations against this court. Your fine stands." Kendrick inclined his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Thank you, Your Honor." He returned to his seat, feeling the weight of the courtroom's eyes on him. He could sense the quiet admiration of some and the trepidation of others. This wasn't the first time Kendrick had encountered bias cloaked in authority, but something about this moment felt different. The energy in the room was palpable, as if everyone was waiting for what he would do next. Kendrick pulled out his phone, discreetly typing notes. He wasn't done, not by a long shot. He made a quiet decision then and there. This situation wouldn't end here. The courtroom continued its routine, but Kendrick's presence had already shifted the atmosphere. Others noticed it too. An older black man sitting 2 rows ahead turned slightly, offering Kendrick a brief, knowing glance. The court clerk, her fingers flying over the keyboard, occasionally hesitated, her discomfort.